Hi, my name is Logan Yuri, and I'm on the Irrational Lab team, a behavioral economics research team led by Dan Ariely. I'm very excited to welcome my dear friend Joey the Cat to Google. A former teen prodigy in the Chuckee Cheese Skeeball circuit, Joey the Cat turned pro in the fall of 2009 and quickly made a name for himself in the Brewskee-Ball nationwide tour. At 24, he continued to push the statistical limits and was the first SF roller to capture a triple crown, which is the BROTY, the Brewskee Mug and Hundo challenge. The records kept coming, and Joey the Cat could not be stopped. In 2001, in a field of the world's 64 best rollers, Joey the Cat dominated the competition and was crowned the #1 Skeeball player. He won again in 2012 and 2014 and is now the most acclaimed competitive Skeeball player on the planet. In 2013, he quit his cushy tech job to focus full-time on his Skeeball rental business. He's here to talk to you about how you too can turn your passion into a career. Joey, thanks for being with us.
Logan, thanks for having me.
So I thought it would be fun to start off with a little audience participation, and maybe somebody can challenge Joey to a little Skeeball match.
Oh my god. Alright. It's been a long time. So all nine?
All nine, yeah.
Holy crap. Alright. We're on a time limit.
The first three balls are a little wide, still trying to find the center. Oh, there we go. Size 150. 250s. Almost had it dialed in for a second there, but they're spraying left and right. 9 balls through, 220.
Woo!
220. Nice again. Thank you. What we call find your 40. You can go right down the middle and try to roll it as center as possible. Get up to the 40 in the pocket so that you can get your average time over 10 games. If you play 10 games in a row when you're a national champion. So in this case, I'm just trying to keep my aim nice and high, centered out to the 40. Sometimes I jump to the 50. In this case, nice and smooth, right down the middle.
Nicely done. David, thanks for participating.
No problem.
Okay, Joey, so I'm going to ask you questions for a little while, and then at the end we'll open it up to the audience. So let's start by talking about your love of Skeeball. Then we'll talk about the Skeeball business, and we'll wrap it up with your advice for budding entrepreneurs. So first of all, who are you, and who is your alter skigo, Joey the Cat?
My name is Joey Mucha, and born and raised in Portland, Oregon. Moved to San Francisco 6 years ago, and when I moved to San Francisco, I joined a competitive Skeeball league, and everyone has an alter skigo when they join the league because it's sort of escapism and something fun to do. And so the alter skigo that I employed in the league was Joey the Cat, which was given to me in college, and it's sort of a metaphor for always being on the prowl, keeping your claws sharp, both in personal and professional endeavors.
Fresh suit. I like it.
Thanks.
And I guess my second question is, why Skeeball?
Skeeball came to me, as you mentioned, from Chuckee Cheese. I was in the arcade for my 11th birthday with my family and friends, and I was wandering around the arcade, and my dad was kind of hovering around the Skeeball machines, and he said, "Joe, you should play this game. It's really interactive, and you're not just staring at a screen, pushing buttons and shooting fake things. You're rolling something tangible up the ramp, and there's instant gratification," and sort of that planted the seed for my Skeeball love.
And can you tell us a little bit about your journey to the national championship?
Yeah, when I joined the competitive Skeeball league, when I moved here, I fell in love with the game and playing with friends, and I excelled pretty well, but not the best in San Francisco. I was a top seed from San Francisco, and they invite the top 64 rollers to come out and compete. And so I go to the national championship in New York City. So I'm flying across the country to play competitive Skeeball. And I go out there, and I was a Hundo roller. I was rolling for the 100-point pockets, and I was quickly met with adversity, and I ended up losing in the 3rd round to the eventual champion, Ski Diddy.
He'll always get you.
Ski Diddy. And so when I come back to San Francisco, after the national championships, I really went back to the drawing board, and I had to reevaluate my game. And so what I did right after that was I said, all right, the only way to get better at this game, I'm living in Bernal Heights, one-bedroom apartment, and I went onto eBay and I said, maybe I got to buy my own skee-ball machine, and I end up shipping out a skee-ball machine into my apartment. And so that was losing the national championship and then figuring out how to get better and owning your own skee-ball machine.
How often were you practicing?
I was practicing 3-4 times a week and really becoming a student of the game and the sport.
So, and the next year, did you go back and claim that championship?
So yeah, there's a couple of videos on YouTube, some Rocky-inspired training videos of me practicing and sort of reminiscing on the prior year's failure, and then climbing up the top of Bernal Heights with skee balls in my hand and posting that to YouTube to sort of send a message that I've been practicing a lot. And I went back, and my mom, she said her birthday falls on around Memorial Day, when the skee-ball national championships are every year. And she said, all I want for my birthday is a skee-ball national championship for my son. So really set the pressure high, but I clawed my way through the field and pulled it out. And in the very last match, you roll 10 games in a row, alternating with your opponent one-on-one. And so, as I was mentioning in the little exhibition round we had here, you need to keep your average high. So if you miss the hundreds, or you're going really ambitious and you miss, it's going to create a pretty volatile score. And then if someone who's steady right down the middle is going to keep their average higher and surface to the top. And so I won it. And there's a speech online, also on YouTube, where I dedicate it to my mom, winning my first ever national skee-ball championship.
And what did it feel like to win?
It was electric. It was so gratifying to practice really, really hard and commit myself to this game and focus. I was so focused and dialed in that it was special on so many levels, not only being around all my friends, but the energy in the room, the community that is a part of this skee-ball league is electric, and it was just so much fun. And then shaking up that champagne bottle, spraying it around the bar where the tournament was being held, and then dedicating it to my mom.
That's beautiful.
Felt amazing.
Yeah. Do you have any favorite skee-ball stories that you want to share with us?
Yeah, so a couple of skee-ball stories I've got, not related to the business, I guess, is going back to the second national championships. And my parents actually flew out from Portland, Oregon to New York City to watch me play. So not only did my mom ask me, can you dedicate the championship to my birthday? She says, can we come out and watch you? And it was one of two rollers that also had their parents in attendance. They probably didn't travel as far across the country, but having my parents out there to sort of enlighten them to this experience was really special, because not only did my dad get me into the game, he is so supportive of me playing, and my mom was so excited to see all of these victories and then come out and watch it live. And she was so nervous. She said, I don't know how you stay calm under pressure up there, because there were multiple times during the third national championship that I competed in where she had to turn away, and there was so much pressure, and there were 3 times that I almost lost. So you have to go from 64 rollers down to 2 and then play for the title, and basically win out. And there were 2 matches where I was down by a handful of points in frame 7, 8. Against Brewskee, Snakes on a Lane, and then ultimately Chips Ahoy was the guy I played in the finals, and my parents were right there, and I handedly won that second national championship in the final round.
This sounds like a movie waiting to happen.
Yeah, there's a documentary in the works. There's a fair amount of interesting storylines and interesting characters, and then some drama on the competitive side and the business side.
Yeah, so that's a good transition into the business side. Can you tell us a little bit about what you were doing before?
So I moved to San Francisco to work for an internet technology company, and I jumped in as an online marketing manager, having never been to the Bay Area other than to look for housing. And it was fantastic. I worked for this company for a couple years, and then they ended up getting acquired by a larger mobile advertising network. And all along the way, I was running the Skeeball biz on the side, and then I went and worked for another company, and then they got acquired by a publicly traded company. And so I was achieving a certain amount of success. I mean, nothing astronomical. I was an early employee, but not a significant shareholder, but learning a ton, both about business and strategy and sort of navigating the professional landscape, but also building my marketing and sales chops.
So how did Skeeball transform from a hobby to a business for you?
When I bought that first Skeeball machine, that's when people started calling me crazy. They said, why do you have your own Skeeball machine? What are you doing? You're not an arcade operator. You don't run the league. Why do you have this machine? And so I said, it's to practice and because I love the game. And then it wasn't until I had my very first client that wanted to rent this machine for me for a company anniversary that I figured there is a business behind this game. It's niche enough and in enough demand, and I can create enough demand that people would potentially want to have these at events and have me host tournaments. And so it was that point when I realized it could become a side business. When I said, there is a small market for this. And so I pursued that, and I reinvested all the money I got from the rentals back into the side business.
Was there a pivotal moment or a pivotal company where you said, this is a real thing that I can do?
Yeah, when I rented my first machine to Airbnb for their second anniversary party. Airbnb is a home sharing rentals marketplace, and I became a host on Airbnb, and the sort of hook to my space, why someone would want to rent my space, other than the terribly uncomfortable couch that they were staying on, was I had a Skeeball machine inside my apartment. So I said, rent a couch or Skeeball machine in Bernal Heights. And at the time, Airbnb was growing very rapidly, but still small. And the CEO was living on Airbnb. And so he stayed at my apartment. And when he saw the Skeeball machine in there, he was just enamored with my story and with the sort of novelty of this large. It was a 13-footer. This is a 10-footer you see right here. So it's even 3 feet longer on the lane, which makes it even more of a overwhelming furniture piece in your small one-bedroom apartment, because I had to step over it to get into my kitchen. I had to walk around it to get into my bedroom. It was blocking one of my doors. And so he said, we need this at our second anniversary party. And so we made it happen. We put it inside the original Airbnb office, which was also their apartment. And so it had this very homey, like from one small business budding entrepreneur to a growing small business in inside their apartment. Mm-hmm. And then people just had so much joy playing it.
So you talked about your companies being acquired. The question on my mind is, do you actually make a living from your Skeeball business?
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, it's my primary source of income. Sometimes I'll rent my place out on Airbnb for a little bit of supplemental income, but the majority of my income comes from this business, renting, leasing, and hosting Skeeball tournaments.
So walk us through a typical workday for you.
A typical workday for me is waking up, answering emails, either inbound leads coming in from the website or outbound sales efforts that I'm working on, a couple hours of email, and then I'm either delivering Skeeball machines to events, mm-hmm. or servicing Skeeball machines, or going around to Skeeball machines and collecting the passive income that's coming into the machines that are in bars and venues.
And did you always see yourself as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, my personal DNA was wired to always be hands-on, whether that was starting companies or building things. And when I was in college, I never skateboarded before, and I wanted to skateboard for the first time. So instead of just buying a skateboard, I started researching on the web how to make skateboards. And then I figured out how to take the thin laminates of wood and put them together into these molds and then cut them out and install the graphics and the hardware. And the next thing you know, I was building 5-10 skateboards a month and just selling them to friends and having fun with that. And then a lot of people do this, but silk screening t-shirts and just sort of creating your own wares that you want to interact with. And then Skeeball came around, and it was a no-brainer for me that it could be a business.
What has surprised you most about working for yourself?
The most surprising thing for me is that when you run your own company full time, you think you're going to have all this free time, and you think you're going to have way more flexibility, and it's absolutely the opposite, because you end up having to work even harder and even longer hours to really make your venture pay dividends. You could just make ends meet and put in the minimum amount if your business is already generating revenue, but to make it really grow and thrive, you have to start finding efficiencies and hiring people and positioning your assets so that they can work for you as best as possible. But that takes a lot of hard work with sales and marketing and partnerships. And so when I quit my job, I said, all right, I'm gonna have all this time to travel and you know, take on other projects, but it was quite the opposite. I was working even harder and not doing some of my other pastimes to get the business to where I wanted it, because I was very ambitious with where I wanted it.
Is there one aspect of your business that you're particularly proud of?
Yeah, so the passive side of the business, where I just put games into venues, bars, art galleries, food truck parks, and they work for me. And so this is how Warren Buffett sort of initiated his base capital to grow his empire, was through passive income streams, gumball machines and vending machines. And so putting them into bars has an incredibly long sales cycle, because you need to become friends with the owners and convince them that the space in their bar is something that you can take up to not only provide an amenity to the patron, but make money off of that space. And so one story that I'm really proud of is building a Skeeball trailer. So I took 2 Skeeball machines, cut the legs off, and put them on a utility trailer that you'd pull around lawnmowers with, like a landscaping trailer. And I just cut the legs off the Skeeball machine and plopped them right onto the trailer. And it required not only hands-on skills with building things, but also business development. I had to figure out, where is this thing gonna live? I don't have a garage, I don't have storage for it, and how is it gonna make money? And so very early on, I partnered with a food truck park that is basically pioneering in this, in San Francisco, the sort of mobile food truck ecosystem, and they housed my Skeeball trailer once I completed it, so it could stay there semi-permanently, and I could take it out and drive it around.
So you talked a little bit about how it was surprising that you actually have less time rather than more time now that you run your own business. What are some other surprises and challenges of working for yourself?
So when you work for yourself, you basically have to do everything from operations to sales to HR to, you know, taking out the trash, and you can't be ashamed of taking on those tasks. And if you're literally working for yourself and you're the only employee, you have to do everything. And so, like, hiring an accountant was something I didn't think I would have to do. I could just learn some accounting software and figure it out. But if you're not good at that, you need to bring on some help. And so figuring out what tools I needed to use to make myself most efficient was something that surprised me, and I had to explore and learn. And so I'm using an array of tools that make my job more efficient, which is like an online accounting software called Xero, a credit card acceptor called Stripe, and Google Apps to manage all of my sales reps' email accounts and calendaring, so I have my scheduling all in place, and sort of a variety of web-based tools, and then having a website. Like, I was incredibly surprised how much inbound sales leads I was getting just by being really highly indexed.
How do people find you?
The 2 primary sources are my website via Google search and Yelp. Yelp has been an incredible inbound lead source.
So I'd like to transition into giving advice to people. I think there's a lot of people at Google who enjoy their jobs but also have a big passion, and I think they have some questions around how do you turn your passion into a career. So to start off, what's the best career advice you've ever been given?
I mean, it's cheesy, but doing something that you love is so critical, because if it doesn't keep you up at night, if you're not passionate about it, you're not going to pour your heart into it, and you're not going to take all of your free time and really spend that time doing this thing. And you may not fall in love with it until you know that it can be successful or that it has potential to grow. And until you really give it a chance, and if it doesn't keep you up at night and you're not proud to go up to someone and say, this is what I'm doing, or this is what I want to be doing, and even walking up to a stranger and saying, I'm the best seamstress who makes leather pants, like whatever it is, like something obscure or something mundane, but you apply a twist to, then you're going to have a hard time selling it. You're going to have a hard time telling someone that, oh, I quit my XYZ to do this thing, unless you are really, really excited about it.
So most people are not national champions of anything. Do you think you really have to be the best in your fields in order to go and pursue that career? In my case, I excelled from a performance perspective, but I did other things that made me more memorable. If I wasn't a national champion, but I'm wearing a cat suit and have this great brand, and people remember you as the X for Y. I'm the Skeeball guy for rentals, and that is more critical than being some novel sort of performance in sort of culture. You need to be the subject matter expert, basically. You need to be someone that when you leave that room, they're going to say, I know to go to that person for this thing, whatever it is. If it's iPhone apps, if it's fixing cars, if it's building motorcycles, if it's you're a cobbler and you're like the shoe expert, born again shoe expert, whatever it is, you need to be that person for that trade. But not be afraid that you're not going to be that the next day. It's going to take time. It took me 3 years to say, I'm going to quit my day job, my cushy 6-figure salary, to do this thing that's going to make me not very much money, but I'm going to have 100% ownership in it. And you have to put in the time. And so it takes time to grow. This is a ball of clay that you need to mold, and it's going to change direction. I thought I wanted to start Skeeball leagues and copy what they were doing. But no, I created 3 other businesses, the rentals. And so you need to be creative with the way your business or your idea adapts to the marketplace. Can you talk a little bit more about personal branding and who Joey the Cat is? Yeah, so Joey the Cat was just a nickname. And that's really all it was when I gave it to the Skeeball league operator and said, I'm Joey the Cat. And then I got better at Skeeball, and it's just sort of stuck. And I said, well, people are calling me Joey the Cat, and in the context of Skeeball, so I'm just going to call it Joey the Cat Skeeball Rentals. And then I started to employ some of my creative marketing tactics against that. I built a small brand. I partnered with a designer. I paid him next to nothing to build a logo. And then he designed t-shirts for me that had a really fun, playful nature. Like I went into all these creative exercises that made the brand sort of come to life. And so one of the t-shirts, I always wore a fanny pack. And anybody can wear a fanny pack, but if you own it and like the fanny pack is your thing and you've got all your trinkets in there and you wear it when you're in competition or doing your craft, I started to make that part of my brand. And so I have this t-shirt that has a silkscreen fanny pack on it, and people really wanted that t-shirt because like, oh, is that a functional fanny pack? No, it's just a goofy fanny pack, but it has your logo on it. And my business cards was a great creative sort of exploration. I think I have some on me. It's a coaster. My clientele were bars, and so I could take these to a bar, and it's a letterpress coaster, which is kind of a lost trade, and it basically is something I could leave at a bar and not feel inappropriate to give that to a bar owner. And so I started to remove friction with my brand to get to the people I wanted to talk to. And then the third thing is I'm wearing a cat suit right now. I'm owning this brand. The first Joey the Cat attire that I had was a African women's jumpsuit onesie that I got on Haight Street at a secondhand store. But it was the most iconic Skeeball performance attire that anyone was wearing, and so it was very memorable.
And then I retired that to the Skeeball Memorabilia Hall of Fame and then upgraded to this thing, a 3-piece custom tailored Sumatra tiger cat suit, which has just not only been an interesting piece of clothing to wear, but has become my brand. You will never forget this suit. It's going to be etched into your eyes forever.
I apologize.
And yes, apologies all around, but you'll say, if you want to remember who that was, it was either the guy in the cat suit or the guy with the Skeeball machine, or in this case, the guy in the cat suit who brought the Skeeball machine. And that piece of sort of information that stays with you will create what marketers call brand recall. And it separates you from the cream, the crop of people that are trying to do whatever is, in this case, arcade games are a commodity. It's a commoditized product that I've differentiated through branding and creating sort of demand within the marketplace.
It's really interesting to hear you talk about what a role personal branding has played. Are there any people you look up to who you think are really excelling at this?
There's a band that I follow called Conbro Chill, and they have a type of music called party rock. And even if you don't love the music, if you see them live, they even make this metaphor towards like burning their image into your eyes. Like they have so much creativity with the way they perform and the way their stage presence is transacted to the audience that it's infectious and it sort of has this viral nature. And I think that, and then they live it. They live it on Twitter. They live it in their videos that they create. And it permeates the entire experience. And the songs get you going, but if you're not into that type of music, it can still get you on a variety of other emotional chords. And so Conbro Chill, a small up-and-coming party rock band, is someone that I draw inspiration given the sort of counterculture nature of my business. Definitely, yeah, it's fun.
So I'm sure a lot of people come up to you and say, oh, I want to do the same thing as you. I want to be an entrepreneur. What are some of the mistakes that you see people making?
I kind of hinted on it a little bit earlier, but it's either thinking you can't succeed because you don't have something right away, and then not pouring your heart and soul and being prepared for opportunity. I think success is the intersection of preparedness and opportunity. And it's sort of a two-way street. The opportunity arises when you're prepared, and you're prepared, and the opportunity arises, you will achieve success. And so I saw this sort of catapulting itself in my mind and my business when I put myself in position by being, if you Google Skeeball rentals in San Francisco, #1 result. So when someone and across the country, I'm on the first page, but some producer Googled that unique term in New York and found me and then wanted to put me on a TV show on the Travel Channel. It's like I was prepared for the opportunity, and then when the opportunity presented itself, I was able to execute on it.
What happened with the Travel Channel show?
So they were doing a new series called Game On America, where they bring in a host that is a casino sort of counterfeit spotter. Like he can figure out who's cheating in casinos, and he would go around and teach people how to excel in games. And they said, we would like you to teach the host how to play Skeeball and how to hustle someone in Skeeball. And then they came to San Francisco and filmed for a day, and I was on the pilot, or the very first episode of the show, for about 6 minutes, teaching the host how to play Skeeball and hustle a group of bystanders. Did
it lead to a lot of new business?
I don't think it directly correlated with new business, but it definitely it legitimized my sort of status as someone just beyond a Skeeball league. It's like, okay, this person is a teacher as well as a player.
So you've already accomplished so much as Joey the Cat. What's next?
So the business, as I mentioned, is a commodity. You can go out and buy an arcade game today and put it in a bar. You can buy an arcade game today and put it up on Craigslist to have people come rent it, whatever you want to do. But I see the business growing both from its nostalgic nature, but also I want to introduce a little bit of innovation into the company. And so I'm working on some cashless payment systems for the games. I think there's a lot of opportunity there, credit cards specifically, and working with an engineer on that is taking up a lot of my time. And so I actually want to hire someone and train someone to take on some of the day-to-day stuff that I'm doing, and that's a big step. I have some commission-only salespeople under the team right now, but to hire a full-time employee to do what I'm doing is definitely a near-term next step for the business.
That's really exciting. Well, that's it for my questions. Is there anyone in the audience who has a question? How many machines do you own, Joey?
So I own 25 Skeeball machines, just like the one you see here, the classic 10-footer with mesh nets, the 100-point pockets, and the old school aesthetic that you remember from Chuckee Cheese and the boardwalk.
The question was, why don't you aim for 100, and why is that hard?
So the 100-point pocket is sort of the highest point value pocket on the scoring board, and it's in a position in the corners where not only is it farther away from any of the other pockets, it's smaller in diameter, which does a couple of things. It makes it more volatile for the ball to actually create a smooth entry point. And the ball needs to be moving at a certain inertia to go into it smoothly. And so to be able to control it, it's kind of like hitting for a home run every time in baseball. You're going to either miss the ball completely or make marginal contact, but some of the time you're going to make it a home run and you're going to go straight into the 100-point pocket. But no one has perfected it to go straight into the 100-point pocket, and it's purely the geometry and the physics of this game. And so the only way that I've seen a lot of success with the 100-point pocket is off the net, because it does two things. It slows the ball down and it softens the angle. What they do in the national championships is they actually tighten the nets to the point where it's basically hitting a concrete wall and you're not going to get it to go in. And so it's just such a volatile pocket to go for that you're going to really create a lot of risk and a wide delta in your scoring range.
So we're going to have a little demonstration.
Yeah, so I mean, every machine is different, and that's what's the beauty of this game, is that they all have their own character. But at the national championships, they tighten the nets and they use brand new rubber, so the ball comes off really strong. But you basically want to make it go off the side net like that. See how it kind of comes off the side net? And then you slow the ball. It slows the ball down. So you got to find the right angle. And sometimes people will actually go off the, there we go. So see how it comes off the net right there? But even, there, see how it almost went in right there? It's tough. It's tough. That's why I don't go for hundreds. Of course, the last one goes in. But yeah, it slows the ball down to the point where it basically makes it easier for it to enter. And so whenever I go to an arcade or a boardwalk, I'll definitely try to find the machine that has the easiest nets to go after.
So the question is, how much is your success in business tied to your success as a player?
So the success as a player, in my mind, is a novelty and a nice to have. But what it did do is it definitely kept my morale high as the entrepreneur. Winning was definitely gratification. When you put so much time and energy, I've calculated I've probably played 5,000 or 6,000 hours of Skeeball. Not only being a student of the game, but dissecting the machines, breaking them. A big piece of advice I have for entrepreneurs is to break it to see how it works. Whether that's a car, a bicycle, whatever you're working with, learn how they actually work, because then if you're not an expert playing the game, you can be an expert as a mover and creator of the game.
I think that's a great point, because it's a little intimidating to think about becoming national champion or something, but you can be the best at deconstructing a Skeeball machine, even if you're not the best player.
If I would have spent all my time I did practicing to play the game, learning how to create my own Skeeball machine, I'd probably have a really killer Skeeball machine, or or something that is even more interesting than this game. And you need to be prepared to go down that path that you don't necessarily know the outcome. You can't train to be a Skeeball national champion and assume you're going to win it. There's a lot of risk and luck involved there. So what I did was I worked really hard selling. I worked really hard selling, and I worked really hard building relationships, throwing parties, and creating my own demand. And so if you ask people, they will give you an answer. And you got to be ready for no, and you got to be ready for adversity in sales. But a lot of people will say yes, and a lot of people will want to help you.
The question is, do you ever wish that Skeeball machines were more portable? And we're surprised that there isn't a more portable version at this point.
Yeah, so the Skeeball machines are at this perfect intersection of overwhelming size, yet marginally portable. I put this in the back of my pickup truck and drove it down, and with some help from Logan here, we brought it upstairs. And it didn't take that long, and it wasn't that hard. But to be able to take on the risk and say, I'm going to figure out how to move these things, I was using Zipcar rented trucks. I never even owned a truck before, like for the first 90% of my business. I kept my overhead really low to rent one truck to move a machine or a van to move two. And they do break into two parts. There's the long lane, and then it divides where the scoring pockets begin into two parts. And it's getting creative with the way you stack them, the way you move them, how you have a helper position the machines. And I do wish they were smaller, but I think them being smaller would take away from the impact. There are really cheap $300 Skeeball machines that you'd have for maybe a kid's backyard party, but they don't have the same effect. And so bringing this particular arcade game out into the wild is what gives it its novelty.
What would this cost, $5 grand?
New, they're $5 or $6 grand. They don't make this model anymore, so I find them online from anywhere between $500 to $2,500 a machine. And then one rental goes for $600 for the machine for a day. So the payback period is pretty aggressive, yeah.
One question I have is, do you still find playing Skeeball fun, even though it's your business?
That's a great question. I do still find it fun because at the end of the day, it's a game. And the fun that I find out of it is sort of just enjoying. The whole reason I'm here is because I'm playing this game, and the friends around you. If I was in a vacuum just playing by myself as a robot, just rolling for high scores or trying to get that perfect game 900, I wouldn't be having as much fun. But I'm with my friends, and every event that I go to is a new opportunity to meet somebody, to show them my passion, and to experience something new.
I think that's a great place to end it. Joey, thank you so much for coming to Google today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.